Good morning, afternoon, evening, good, whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. And I've worked very hard to get this voice that I've got tonight. I've been in bed about 4 days in a row with this awful virus, and I'm on the recovery side now, so I'm not infectious. I'm not going to cause you guys any pain, I don't think. You women any pain. I'm learning about my male chauvinism. So, for your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is that they want to talk about. Now, my first two guests tonight are quite interesting and unique in how I met them. I was in the post office in Multnomah Village. That's kind of a suburb of Portland, Oregon, where we're filming the show now. And Susan was behind me, and the people in front of me in line were taking an awful long time, so I was kind of bored, and so was she, and we started chatting. And we found out we had enough common interests that we talked for about 5 or 10 minutes. And I thought, you'd be an awfully good guest to have on this show, just from what we were talking about and my impression of the kind of a human being that you are. But then that wasn't enough. As you were talking, you mentioned your daughter, Zanana over here, Zanana Rose. And then when you talked about her some, I thought, well, I think Zanana is going to be a better guest than Susan is, so I said, bring her along. So here we are, the three of us, and we're going to talk about who you are as unique individuals, as I said, and whatever else comes to mind that you may want to talk to my viewing audience or talk to me about. Typically, a show starts with what I call the bio segment, where we talk about who you are personally. No psychoanalysis, but family and pets and like that, and whatever else, and then we'll flow from there. So I'm not going to do my whole spiel because they've heard it 1,000 times, but to sort of model it a little bit. I'm presently I spend most of my time producing and hosting this show, Conversations with Dr. Don, and all the work involved, and then I do some modeling and acting anymore. I'm a retired clinical psychologist and a humanist minister and some other stuff that is not too important right now, but I'll be prying more information than that out of you when I talk to you. So who shall I start with?
It's up to you.
Just go for it.
Certainly. All right. So Susan, what did you think when you first saw me in the post office in line and I started talking to you? You said, who is this character?
Actually, I thought that you were a very fun-spirited, open man. You first looking at you, I wasn't expecting that, but I appreciated the spontaneity because you just kind of turned to me. There was a man there who was on the telephone, and and so you turned jokingly and said, I'm on, and are you? and so it just took me by surprise, but I appreciated the spontaneity and your...
He was rather loud, wasn't he? Yes.
Yeah, it was really loud, and it was going on and on and on.
Sympathetic soul, and that's why they got hooked up.
And then that was when we hooked up and connected, and so for me, as a part of what I do, is around spontaneity and allowing ourselves to be in the moment, and so I appreciated that because you threw me off guard in a way to just play with that.
Right. So if I were to ask your best friend, who is Susan O'Brien? What would they say if I asked them that? That's a trick question.
Yeah. I'd say that they'd say that I am very open, caring, nurturing, a willing person in the world to connect with other people.
Why would they say that?
Why would they say that? Probably because the way I show up with people.
It's true, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, now you sure came across, it was refreshing talking to you in the post office line. Now let's go on with a little bit about you personally. Where were you born? Were you local or some other part of the country you were born in?
No, actually I was born in California, in Sacramento. And
Another California.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in Oregon?
I have been in Oregon since July, and I came here because of my daughter Zanana and wanting to come back or not come back, but wanting to connect with family and one of my daughters. So I'm here.
One of your daughters. There are other daughters?
I have another daughter who lives in Southern California, and I was living in Northern California, and doing a lot of, driving either south or north to be with one of my daughters and my grandchildren.
So you decided to go north instead of south.
Yes, yes.
Are you glad you did it?
I'm very glad to be here. I really like this city of Portland.
What do you like about it?
I like the progressiveness of this state. Yeah, I'd say mainly that, and I love the beauty of the city with the water and the river and the bridges and the people.
No, don't believe her. Don't come out. Yeah, we're getting overcrowded already anyhow. Okay, Rick, I apologize. Rick, my favorite cameraman over there, gets very upset if I have too many liberal or progressive guests on, and she says she likes it here because it's progressive. Okay, Rick. He's going to give me what for later on. So you mentioned 2 daughters. You have any more children?
No, I have 2 daughters and 3 grandchildren.
3 grandchildren. Are they going to be watching the show?
Probably at some point, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are their names?
My oldest granddaughter is Tatiana, and my second granddaughter is Sydney, and my grandson Aiden.
Look in that camera over here and tell them hello.
Hi.
Yeah. Do you think that they love you?
Do I think that they love me?
Yeah, I'm so full of
Yes.
questions. Yeah, I can tell for sure.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Now, how about some hard questions? Is anything unique or peculiar about your citizenship, your Americanism, or your religion, or your belief structure, or your politics?
No,
Are you
I don't think so.
white-bread American, average middle class? What, are you rich?
Well, I'd say what's probably somewhat unusual for most American citizens is that I spent 28 years living without power. Other than that,
years without power.
Yeah.
What is that about?
Well, my husband and I built a home and lived off the grid in Northern California.
28 years. What was that like?
It was enjoyable and easy, and I didn't have to worry about the power going out and things, the refrigerator and stuff like that. It was an easy and interesting and simple life. And you can ask my daughter; she grew up with that.
So maybe it's time to switch over and talk to Zanana. So how was it living in that rural life like that?
Well, it was fun and pleasant and peaceful and sometimes boring, especially as a child or a teenager. But it wasn't that we didn't have any amenities, because my dad built a whole solar system so that the house ran on solar power, and we had a TV and a VCR, and we had a telephone eventually, but that took a little bit of time. And
now
we did have a flushing toilet after a little while too.
So you see, you cheated. You had solar. I was thinking you were using kerosene lamps.
Oh, well, we did
candles or
that
what?
too for a while.
So it must have been interesting and fun, huh?
Definitely.
Yeah. And where did you go to school?
Well, I went to grammar school at Camptonville School, which was out in the middle of nowhere because we lived on 20 acres of land in California in the Sierra Nevada foothills. And the school was about think there were about 100 kids from kindergarten through 8th grade, so it was a pretty small school, blended classrooms. And I started in 4th grade there. We had moved from Sacramento, California to this rural town where my parents wanted to raise us, and my dad built the house, and you know, we lived a pretty rural lifestyle. So my father worked at the school, so he was there with us every day, and that was awesome because whenever we wanted to get an ice cream bar or anything like that, we could just say, "Hey Dad, could I have a quarter?" And we could buy our ice cream bar. And he drove the bus and he took care of the maintenance. He was the maintenance supervisor at the school. So you know, it was really nice. We knew everyone. It was a very friendly environment, very community oriented. We did a lot of things with our neighbors, with the families that lived near us. So yeah, it was really pleasant.
And how old were you when you moved away?
Well, let's see. When I moved away the first time, I was 17. I had graduated from high school early, and my birthday's in November, so I was 17 years old and moved out of the house. And then I was in a relationship at the time, and then became pregnant and had a child at the age of nearly 19. So few months after she was born, I moved back home to my parents, and we spent a lot of time there as my daughter was growing, and she cherishes those times that we spent at my parents' house. And so yeah, I probably left there again maybe a year or year and a half after I came back with my daughter, and I moved out and then started to go to college. And at college I studied nursing, and so then I moved a little farther away from home.
Okay. So what do you do now, work-wise or profession-wise?
Well, I practiced as a nurse for 8 years, and I practiced in labor and delivery. And then I decided that I didn't want to continue to be a staff nurse forever. And I had met my husband, and he was really interested in entrepreneurship and owning your own business. And so he really educated me in that realm and encouraged me to have my own business, and he just felt that that was the way to go. So I decided to open a day spa and wellness center with a focus on pregnant and parenting families, because that was my background, working with women around childbirth and pregnancy. And so
a day spa and wellness center.
Yes. So we do spa services. We have massage, facials, pedicures, manicures, all in a low fume environment. It's natural nail care, no tips or acrylics. We use a nail polish that is formaldehyde, DWP, and toluene free, so it's a little bit healthier for children, pregnant women, for all of us really. And we use an organic skincare line from Hungary that's really lovely. It's made from fruits, vegetables, herbs, and it's just divine. It's delicious.
Where is your business?
It's in Southeast Portland.
Southeast Portland.
21st and Clinton in the division.
How big is it? Is it you yourself, or you and your husband?
Well, actually, there are 7 owners, so I have a lot of business partners. And all of us have a history in women's health. So some of my partners had worked at Planned Parenthood. Most of my partners also worked at the hospital that I previously worked at, and were nurses or involved in the unit that we worked in, the labor and delivery unit. And then I do have 2 business partners that are lactation consultants, which I also do. So they help people with breastfeeding, and 2 that are massage therapists.
And why is what you're doing different than what the mainstream medical profession would do? How is it different?
Well, we, the medical profession, well, that's a good question. because what we're doing is a day spa and wellness center. So it's a little, I mean, there are naturopathic services there, and we do have the lactation consulting there. But it is really quite a bit of a wellness center. So the focus there is on wellness and nurturing and offering services that can help people to take care of themselves. It's all about self-care. So which is really, really important in this day and age when people are very busy, they're, go, go, go. It's important to take time for yourself and to nurture yourself, and that's especially important for mothers and for parents.
So you are a real people helper,
Yes.
feet on the ground.
Yeah.
How did you get to be that way?
I don't know. I've been that way forever, I think.
How did she get to be that way,
It started out
Mom?
with my sister. I used to take care of her.
She's the
So
oldest.
time is running slow for us. So,
Yeah.
So how did she get to be that way?
How did she get to be that way? She's just a soul that's
That's
just
so-
been her nature, her being, and she's come in with that. So
It's the
it
mothering she
really-
got, huh? So what do you do nowadays for
So I am a cellular memory release practitioner,
Say that again.
CMR practitioner, a cellular memory release practitioner.
Tell me a little about what that means.
Which that means the ability to connect with the ability to heal and transform what is
Cellular
keeping you
memory.
from having a peaceful and well-being life. So whatever that may be, that gets in the way of that, fears, blocks.
So are you in private practice? Are you with an organization?
So
Have you one clinic or
I'm with
what?
an organization called Cellular Memory Release Organization. I work privately with people. I also do group work I'm also co-lead with a man that I work with in California. And even though I'm here, I'm still very connected with that.
I'm aware time is running short,
Yeah.
but I want to hear a little more about what you're talking about. Supposing I came to see you, why would I come to see you as a professional?
Well, say if you had something going on physically, emotionally, spiritually, on any of those levels, some issue, maybe it's about your work.
I got ongoing
Yes, so you-
gastritis. What
So
would
my
I see
work
you
would
about?
be, it wouldn't be so much as the ordinary counselor that's more talk therapy. The work
Sure.
that I would do would be more experiential, and I would have you tell me what you're feeling and go more into the body, into the experience of what's going on.
And your training
So-
gives you the expertise to do this so that you can help me get better and stop having gastritis.
Right, and it's not so much that I'm the one who's doing it, but I'm holding the space for you to be able to investigate and see what's going on and be able to look at patterns that may have came in at birth or a long time ago, or something that you learned that keeps you in that pattern of suffering that doesn't serve you. So I help you in a way to
You want to
investigate
be careful
that.
now. I'm a clinical psychologist,
I
and I'm on
know.
a pretty steady line here. But I think what's going on is my fantasy is that there's something about the process, your own personal process, when you're with a client, that is as much use as what you're processing up here and hearing my story.
Yeah.
It's
Yes,
a connection.
yeah.
And I can go off on that,
Exactly.
but
But
we're going to need to stop here.
for a break. So in 20 or 30 seconds or so, can you have any closing thoughts or comments for the viewing audience? And by the way, their email addresses are up on the screen a number of times so that you can take that down in case you want to contact either of them about what they're about or for whatever reason. And I think I would like to call you myself sometime. So closing thought or comment you have?
Goodness, I can't think of anything, but thank you so much for having us on the show, Dawn.
Thanks for
It
coming.
was very nice to be able to talk with you.
Yeah, thanks for your spontaneity and openness, because that's the the creativity of life is to just have that ability to not lose the innocence of a child, that's so open and allows us to connect with each other.
All right, my director's waving his hand at me. He says it's time for us to take a break, but before we take a break, I want to say a few things, and then we'll show you our broadcast schedule for you local viewers here in this area. For you viewers who live in the Washington County part of the Portland, Oregon metro area, Conversations with Dr. Don shows are broadcast a number of times each week. Typically, a news show is first aired on a Friday and is rebroadcast on each of the next 4 days. Broadcast dates, times, and stations for you viewers will be up on the screen in a moment for you to make note of. If you don't get it all down now, no, I won't have time. Before we show you the local broadcast schedule, I want to tell you local viewers about my quarterly live call-in talk show. About every 3 months, we have a live on-air call-in show for Portland, Oregon area viewers. There it is now. The call-in show will be on Thursday, January 31st, the next one. And Channel 11, cable Channel 11. And if you're watching from the Portland, Oregon metro area, call in and get on the air with Dr. Don on that date. I want to tell you about another call-in show, and put that up on the screen now if you will. There's a show called Do Something that my friend Sean Savage and I co-host. This is a half an hour, really lively call-in show, and my friend Sean is a libertarian, and he's so far left it scares me, and I'm far left, and we get in fights about who is the more liberal. Then we have, it's really exciting. The guests who call in are not all just liberal, but people who challenge Sean and I about what's going on and what's really going on. Now let's put up the broadcast schedule here for the local viewers, if you will. Okay, we're back. I hope you had your glass of water or whatever you had to do during the break. And as you'll see in a moment, we've switched guests on you here. We've got an old friend of mine, a fellow Democratic Socialist, to my right here, Steve Weiss, who has so much good work he's done for the community, and that's his life. And he has invited
Nancy Weed, who is a friend of his, who's also a citizen activist in her own right, and she's doing excellent work and helping out the community. So as we go along with the second half of the show, you'll find out more about who, not these guys, but this guy and this woman is. Raising my consciousness again about being chauvinistic. But anyhow, you know who I am, so let me start by talking to my new guests about who they are. So shall we start with you, Nancy? Who are you?
That's a deep question.
Okay.
I'd say I'm a former welfare mom
Former welfare mom.
who is very passionate today about conditions of poverty, and my specialty is trying to work on anti-hunger programs. And as a former client, I do get very, very passionate about wanting to make sure that people who are eligible for services actually receive the services they should be getting, because I know from a personal experience what a difference some of those programs really make.
Sure. So what are some of the programs that you're involved with?
Well, primarily, I work for the Oregon Hunger Relief Task Force, and
Oregon
I
Hunger Relief
coordinate
Task Force.
food stamp outreach efforts. So what we are trying to do is increase participation by people who are already eligible, but don't know they're eligible and maybe have various reasons why they don't think the program would apply to them. We've actually been pretty successful. Started back in 2000. Oregon's participation statewide was about 60% then. We've climbed up to about 80% now, which means, you know, more people getting food stamps. It's starting to decrease hunger a bit in Oregon. It's also had a tremendous economic stimulus impact, because we're talking over $460 million in federal dollars coming back into Oregon and going into our local communities, where they're not only helping to support hungry families, but they're supporting local retailers, local grocers, local agriculture. So
Let
it's
me
a
ask you a
win-win.
few personal questions about you, so
bet.
my viewers can get an idea who you are. You were a welfare mom. Can you say a few words about that? How is it that you were a welfare mom?
Sure. Well, I was actually a preschool teacher, single parent, and had survived not just one but two domestic violence relationships. So
wow.
I was out on my own teaching preschool, but back in those days preschool teachers made minimum wage. They probably don't make much better these days, unfortunately. So I decided to go back to school to earn a degree, to try to get myself up out of the poverty range and avoid having my kids be statistics. And actually, through a lot of perseverance, I made it through graduate school, went to Portland State's School of Social Work,
Really?
and would not
Wonderful.
have made it through without programs like low-income housing and food stamps.
Wow.
So that's definitely had an influence on why I feel so passionate about doing the work I do today. And like I was telling Steve on the way in here tonight, I don't think you forget the kind of experiences that you go through. So
And I'm sure you've got some stories, yeah.
I have a few I could share.
Do you have family?
I do.
And you're you're a mom, and how many kids do you have?
I have two boys. Tim's 22 now and Brandon's 16, so they're not really babies anymore, but they have stuck by me through all the thick and thin and hard times, and times when Mom was at school and working. And I think I like to think that they watched what I did, and it helps them realize how important some of the stuff that we're working on is.
Are they good kids?
They're great kids.
I know what the answer is going to be. And that is your full-time work now.
This is my full-time work. And it's interesting, that's a lot of what got me through graduate school, was thinking if I could use some of my past experiences to make it easier for other people, then that makes it have been for a very good reason. And that gives me a lot of strength.
So, in your work, are you with organizations, or do you give speeches or talks, or do you see clients personally?
Well, I
what do you do?
all of that. Work one-on-one with persons trying to access food stamps. Have many, many partners statewide. Primarily the one I'd like to plug the most is Oregon SafeNet, because they run a toll-free hotline where people can call, and if they have any questions about eligibility, they'll get their questions answered. Do a little eligibility screening, let them know where the nearest office is, what to bring with them, And then if people have a hard time applying, they actually encourage them to call back, and they'll do a little advocacy to make sure the experience is
Let's put
positive.
that up on the screen now, and you can say a little more about that again.
Sure.
Oregon SafeNet. That's
Oregon
where
SafeNet, it's fantastic. They get, you get a live operator. It's not a recording. There's Spanish translations, a live person guiding you through the eligibility process, and also giving you information about other programs you may not have been aware of. They're our fantastic partner, and that toll-free number is available statewide for any Oregonian to call.
So any Oregonian who's having difficulty with food stamps,
Or issues with, hunger is often hidden.
hunger,
If you don't pay your rent, you end up being homeless. If you don't pay your electricity, you get the power turned off. People don't see hunger as often. There's no bill collector for hunger. It's when people are getting to the end of the month and having to make those very difficult decisions about which bills to pay. And you have to keep your home, you have to keep your electricity on, so oftentimes people are cutting in their food budget. And food stamps can help get people over that hump. They're not just for, a lot of people think they're only for people with kids. They're for single persons, singles, students. Could be your average couple, two-income family that thinks they're middle income. Something happens to one of those incomes and they're getting by on one salary.
yeah.
While they're in those tough times and their monthly income drops, they should come in and get food stamps.
They should come in and get food stamps.
Absolutely.
Is there more hunger nowadays than there was, say, 10, 20 years ago? Give me some sort of an idea from your information or your research. Is there more hunger nowadays?
I think nationally we're getting a better grip on what it means to be hungry. A lot of people don't understand the terms. What does hunger mean? What does food insecurity mean? A lot of the measurements by the USDA, our national measurements, have really gotten tighter in the last 10 years, so we do take surveys and we can tell if states are improving. And there is some small indication that Oregon, we used to rank #1 in hunger rankings back in 2000. We're down at about the middle of the pack nationally. We've got a lot of room to go, but we've made some really good strides. We're doing some good things here in Oregon.
#1 meaning the highest rate of hunger in the nation.
Correct, back in 2000.
My golly, well, what has happened that caused it to change favorably?
Well, I like to think that more people using food stamps means less people going hungry. We also had a lot of focus because, hearing you're #1 meant a lot of our legislators and leaders in Oregon began looking at hunger. We hear our governor now today speaking about hunger being an income issue, and people have, I think, a better grip on some of the poverty conditions that contribute to Oregonians going hungry.
I'm not sure you can answer this question, but I wonder, why is it that we have in our society as much hunger and those kinds of conditions as much as we do? It seems like America, this rich country, and freedom and all that kind of stuff. Why is it there's more hunger now than? Is it normal or acceptable?
No, I don't think so. I think, it's a lot of it boils down to the lack of living wages. If everyone had a living wage job, we wouldn't have need for these social support services. In Oregon, we've seen, those manufacturing jobs have declined, and more, public sector jobs. People are out there working as clerks and flipping burgers, and we've had a lot of layoffs, and sort of the shift of our employment has had a tremendous impact on how well people are able to take care of their families.
Well, isn't that a matter of free trade and freedom, and so that a company, a corporation can find cheap labor anywhere it wants to in the world? And
Absolutely.
yeah.
And, we also buy into, we need to be self-sufficient, we need to take care of ourselves, and many people think it's very stigmatizing, very shameful to seek help when they need help.
We got to get over to Steve here because time is running out. But I'm thinking about, does any particular client that you saw recently provoke a memory or a thought that was unique with that client, this person who was hungry and coming to you to get help for food stamps?
One that I spoke with recently who was a student, like I myself was, and she reminded me of those because those were the days when I really knew what it was like to be hungry,
hungry
to
student.
feed my children and go to bed hungry because there wasn't enough food in the house to feed myself. And that evoked all those memories of getting through that. People should get help when they need help without feeling ashamed or stigmatized. That's what the program is for.
What do we need to do as citizens to remedy this situation, to make things better, even better than they are?
Even better than they are. Well, right now, there's a great opportunity. Federally, Congress is reauthorizing the Farm Bill right now, which the food stamp program falls under. This is a great opportunity for them to keep it a strong program and keep it as strong for future generations as it is today.
So people should contact their representatives in Washington and tell them to vote for the Farm Bill, or be sure that it includes those provisions that are going to help out the conditions we're talking about.
And keep our programs strong.
Yeah, you're great.
Thank you, Don.
Shall we talk to Steve?
I think you should.
I don't know, Steve, are you ready? Yeah, it's so good to see you.
In a long time.
Yeah. I met Steve some years ago when I was involved with the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, and he was our boss here in the local area. The chapter has not been very active lately, but I was so impressed with, and in our meetings we'd all chat and talk about things and things that were important, and Steve wouldn't say very much, and pretty soon he'd say something and I was all ears, because whatever he said was no wasted words or thoughts. He's a deep thinker and a very concerned and caring human being. And not only my impression, but your history of what you've done, and I see you in the paper now and then.
Yes.
You've won an award here or some recognition there for the work you're doing now. A few words about yourself personally, and then tell me about what's been going on lately and these awards you've won, or whatever you want to tell me, Steve. I'm all ears.
Well, I think for a long time I was a misfit. And what I mean by that is I really didn't fit in anywhere. So about a dozen years ago, I did something rather unique. I began carving out a place for myself. And I've been remarkably successful at doing that. Right now, and I'll do this fast because I know we're low on time, I'm board president of the Oregon State Council for Retired Citizens. I'm board president of Independent Living Resources. I'm board president of the Community Alliance of Tenants. That's 3 board presidencies of nonprofits. In addition, I chair the Housing Authority of Portland's 504 Disability Advisory Board. I chair the Multnomah Department of County Human Services Citizens Budget Advisory Committee. I'm a member of the Elders in Action Commission, the Portland Citizens Disability Advisory Committee, the Multnomah Healthy Aging Coalition. I'm going to stop there.
It choked me up. So what's your primary effort nowadays? What do you spend most of your time doing? I know I call your office sometimes. I reach you.
My office is my home, as you know.
Yeah.
Mostly anti-poverty work in one way or another through disability-related stuff, senior-related stuff, housing, healthcare, but generally, Don, it's based on the way I view life and what I believe in. And I can summarize what I believe in very briefly, although it's the short version. It's truth, justice, and the value of a single human life.
Let's talk. And you're one of those few who talk and seems to walk the talk. Yeah. So what's a typical day like for you?
Typical weekday
A weekday.
is
And you work
usually
on weekends too?
No. I rest on weekends if I can. My life is meetings, basically. And I go to a lot of meetings of the organizations with which I'm affiliated. And I give speeches sometimes, and I do cable access shows, other than yours, actually, these days. And generally, volunteer advocacy work. Last year, I won 2 Multnomah County Volunteer Awards, and as you know, in September, I won an Oregon Governor's Volunteer Award. So they're giving me awards
Slow down
for
when
it
you
now.
say those, so my audience can appreciate your Oregon Governor's Award for your anti-poverty work.
For all of my advocacy work, for everything I've done in the last 10 years, the folks who nominated me, the Community Alliance of Tenants and the Housing Advocates Group, just listed everything that I did, and the folks who make those judgments for the governor seem to think it was impressive enough to give me a Regional Governor's Volunteer Award. There are only about 14 or 15 of us, individuals that got those awards. The other awards went to organizations. So And I was in very good company when I went to the awards ceremony in Salem. The people there who got the awards are really doing good and meaningful work, and I was very pleasantly surprised.
Why? I mean, couldn't you be doing something else other than
I was for 30 years.
30 years? And what were you doing for 30 years?
Trying to figure out why I didn't like myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized it was because I hadn't been able to find meaningful work. Now, some of that had to do with the chronic migraine headaches that I suffered from, and some of it had to do with abuse in childhood. But in 1995, a drug came along that relieved my headaches, and I got into a housing situation that was very secure for me. And I asked myself, okay, you've been telling yourself for years that when you got into a situation like this, if it ever happened, you were actually going to do something. Did you mean it, or were you kidding yourself? Well, it's 12 years later, and it looks like I meant it.
Yeah. So, in the last week or so, was there a particular meeting that you went to that the audience was particularly impressed with your presentation?
Well, I don't know if I gave a presentation in the last week. I don't do that every week.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a meeting that that was meaningful to me, because it was a meeting of the Poverty Action Council, which is a committee of the Commission on Children, Families, and Community, and I've been involved with the PAC for some time now. And a woman named Keisha Edwards, who you ought to have on this program, Don, because she is terrific, was a facilitator, and she did training with us.
Ask her to call me.
Look, I'll send you her email address. Is
All
the
right.
best I can. I don't have her phone number. I'll send you her email address. And she did a wonderful she did a wonderful job of facilitating. And I connected with a guy on the Poverty Action Council that I like very much. Somebody else you ought to have on here, a guy named Leroy Patton. He's a
Okay.
little older than I am, and who is a terrific guy and has been doing very useful work in the community for years. Leroy and I liked each other on first sight, and we were doing one of those exercises where you tell each other some stuff, and we shared some stuff that was very, very meaningful. And that's, I mean, it's things like that that make it all worthwhile. I mean, what's going on out there is criminal, which is why I'd like to see the president impeached.
What's going on out there? What do you mean by that?
We have the worst president in American history. There's absolutely no doubt about that. The damage he is doing will last for 2, maybe 3 generations before it can be reversed.
That's powerful stuff. Why do you say that? The worst president in history.
We've got, to give some examples, we've got a disability backlog in this country of 755,000 people waiting 2 or 3 years to get their administrative law judge hearings, to get their disability claims decided upon, because it's routine for 70% of them to be turned down right off the bat, and for 90% of them to be turned down on the reconsideration process, which is the second leg there. That's because the administration won't give the Bush administration won't give the Social Security Administration enough money to hire more administrative law judges and for people who work for Social Security to do what they're supposed to do. We've got a crisis in low-income energy assistance. People desperately need this all over the country because utility bills are sky high and people get cold in the winter. And the Bush administration wants to cut $379 million off the program, and the program as it exists is inadequate. Those are just 2 examples of the degree to which Bush is creating poverty, creating misery, creating mental illness, if you will, because of the stress that this puts people under. And it goes on and on, Don.
No, I can see when you say criminal, and this sounds like more than benign neglect. It isn't reasonable for me to think that an American who experiences the freedom and the wonders of being an American can be this way toward fellow citizens. Is this an overt or a conscious decision on the part of Bush and the administration to have this huge number of people waiting for disability and 2 and 3 years to wait to hear their appeal? That doesn't make good sense. Why would this administration behave this way?
Because I could say because they have no heart, which is true. I think they have dollar signs where their hearts ought to be, but they take a view of people and that is so diametrically opposed to the best aspects of our traditions. And they practice a form of what I can only call extreme capitalism. Obviously, I say that from a socialist perspective, but there can be extremes on either end, Don. And the extremes on the right not only are fascism as practiced, for instance, by the Nazis or Mussolini, they can be also a social Darwinist kind of government where it's survival not so much of the fittest, but of those who are born into wealth, of those who are smart enough to manipulate the system to become rich. I mean, the opportunists of the world, for the opportunists of the world, America is the land of milk and honey.
Well, I'm not sure that those people, by and large, that in the administration, are consciously aware of what they're doing or the results of their policies. I think perhaps the results of their policies are secondary to their primary goal, which you alluded to, where talking about acquiring more wealth and more power. I think every individual has a number of motivations operating at one time. So if their motivation is to have more power and more better than a whole class of people, and their concern about fellow Americans is second or third down from their number one priority, when they're addressing their number one priority, more money, more power, more importance, then they don't choose to look at the effects. And if they look at the effects of their behavior and their policies, then that's collateral damage, or what? Is it class warfare? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
All of those things, but of course their behavior is typical of sociopaths. Now, I'm not a clinical psychologist, Don, but I can recognize sociopathic behavior when I see it.
Oh, Rick. For you viewers, I got to have a little comment from my friend Rick over here. He's my number one conservative regular cameraman for many, many years. And if I'm going too far to the left, why, I got to look over and and so, sometimes he waves a sign to me, or he has a T-shirt and he flashes, and the right is always right or something. But anyhow, and I'm in the same camp that you're in. So, and I find myself thinking nowadays more about not just appreciating for me what's going on and how we got to where we are, but what can we do now to turn things around and have a different result, and have citizens of America be really a part of the intent of America and what it's about in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all those protections. What can we as individual citizens, what can our viewers do to turn things around and have things go in a different direction?
Well, for one thing, viewers who are Democrats can recognize that it's Dennis Kucinich that's standing for the things that we really should have in this country, and that the leading Democratic candidates are offering us the same thing we've had in the past, and that hasn't been sufficient. It's too little and too late.
Well, that's pretty strong. I'm going to challenge you on that. The same thing as we've had in the past, the other Democratic candidates. Isn't there a difference between what Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama and John Edwards, for example, are offering as compared to what Bush and the Republican candidates for the presidency are offering? Isn't there a significant difference?
There's a difference, but it's not significant enough. If Hillary Clinton gets the Democratic nomination, I will look at the polling data shortly before the election, and if she is ahead enough in the polls that she'll beat the Republican nominee for president, I'll vote for a left-wing third-party president. And if she's not ahead enough, I'll probably hold my nose and vote for her, because 4 more years of another Bush, Rudy Giuliani, Mitt Romney, my God, what a rogues gallery.
So there is a difference, huh?
There is a difference, but it's not enough. Time is running out for this country.
Wow. We got to switch over here because you're getting a whoa. What do you think of all this radical stuff that Steve has been saying over there, and I agree with him for the most part.
I got to say, a lot of what he says I agree with too. I think, radical, the Latin of that is, from the root. Change needs to come from within. And I think for too long we've been satisfied with far too many crumbs, if you will. I guess my short and simple answer is that we all need to get out there and use our political power by voting for the people we think can make a difference. And I think too many Americans are apathetic and don't feel like they can make a difference.
Why is that? Why are too many Americans apathetic and they don't feel like they can make a difference? Why is that?
The conspiracist in me says we're conditioned to be that way. We're easier to control if we don't challenge the status quo.
We're conditioned. How do we get conditioned?
Well, you're getting into some really deep territory for me.
Well, okay. And I sometimes, and you might have a comment.
It's just the messages that we see. If you watch mainstream television, for example, it's all very watered down. People don't take extreme stands like Steve does here, and I think if we had more of that, it would at least put those interesting issues out there for discussion, so we can talk about them and figure out how it is we really feel about the issues instead of just repeating something that we've heard perhaps on a TV, if you will.
So there's other ways of getting information about the objective reality on political and social issues other than TV or the mainstream media.
Oh, yes.
And sometimes you have to hear something that you strongly disagree with before you can, begin to enunciate why it is you feel the way you do. How would you know if something was good or bad if you never experienced it? And I think a lot of us, we don't vote, we don't care about issues. We kind of leave it up to somebody else to make those decisions for us. I kind of like it when people like Steve get out there and push the button a little bit and get people talking.
All right. So, what can we tell the viewers in a minute or so that they can do as individuals to make a difference and turn things around?
Well, voting's a good idea, but if we vote for the same old thing, then we're going to continue to have the same old problems. Hillary Clinton's husband gave us the 1996 so-called welfare reform bill. His wife, the historians say, urged him to do it. She's now accusing Barack Obama of being too left-wing to be elected president. If Barack Obama is too left-wing, I'm wondering what I am. He's not, of course.
Rick, you're laughing again at me.
He's not, of course. He's saying there's a crisis in Social Security, and there is not, Don. The Social Security system can be shored up very easily.
We've got to just start winding down now. It's close for us to shut down, so I got to make a few public service announcements. We can go on for a long time with this, and I'm trying to be moderate here, but I'm a Kucinich supporter, and I think all the Democratic candidates are not addressing the number one issue, and that is health care, universal single-payer health care. So that's where I'm coming from.
Me too.
All right. So a few public service announcements. We want to talk about the Alliance for Democracy. That is an organization I belonged to for a long, long time. There's a national website and phone number, and a local chapter of the Alliance here in Portland for you local viewers. Get that phone number down and the website and join us. It's a really active organization, and we lobby in Salem and do all sorts of things to do something to have things turn around and go differently. How about the ACLU? Let's put the panel up for the American Civil Liberties Union. Yay for the American Civil Liberties Union. I'm an ACLU member for centuries, it seems, and thank goodness they are the number one organization in our country that protects our civil liberties. Thank goodness for the ACLU. And there's a local office here for the ACLU. No, there isn't either. The ACLU hotline I want to tell you about. If you think that you've been stopped by law enforcement because of how you look, and you think it's racial profiling, the ACLU wants to know about it. There's a phone number to call. I'm not anti-law enforcement by any stretch of the imagination, but like anything else, sometimes they're a little over-eager in what they're about. Now, I want to tell you about the AHA, the American Human Association, which I'm a member. And I want to tell you about the local AHA chapter, the Humanists of Greater Portland, and tell you about their activities every Sunday morning like regular church folk. We meet at Friendly House at 1737 Northwest 26th Avenue in Northwest Portland. We have programs from 9:30 in the morning until 11. And let's put the schedule for what's going on at our meetings for the month of December. Come out 9:30 and be a part of what's going on there. All right. And what else was I going to tell you about here? Yeah, we have okay, I want to tell you about how to catch the program on the web. Can you put that panel up? My shows are now available on the web. Do videogoogle.com and search Conversations with Dr. Don, and you'll find all of my television shows are on the air there. All right, so it's time for us to stop now. So thank you so much for watching. And remember, email me. My email address is friendlydon@aol.com. Email me and tell me what you think of the show. And when you email me, start the subject line with the words Dr. Don, so I don't accidentally delete your message when I'm deleting junk mail. How's our time running? We have 10 seconds, 30 seconds, what? 20 seconds. Okay, it's time to say KFC. Not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind. Be friendly. And be charitable. To you too. And you. And you, Steve. And you, Rick. Thanks again for watching. And good night.